Stay tuned, it's time for another comic book shop spotlight. Welcome back, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and today I've got another spotlight on a comic book shop that I recently visited. This time it is a third shop down in the Roanoke, Virginia area, and we're going to go over the books that I picked up. Hope you like the books. We'll go over those, and we'll talk about the shop a little bit, and maybe it's someplace that you'll want to visit the next time you're down in that region. But before we begin, definitely hit the like button, slap the subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you never miss an episode that I put out. As I said, every Monday and Friday I put out episodes at 10 a.m. I don't want you guys to miss anything. And I also want to let you guys know that I am on Instagram and on Facebook by the same name, Collector Auctions, and especially on Instagram and to a lesser extent Facebook, I'm going to be selling a lot of my books. I've got a bunch that I want to sell and there's a bunch I want to keep. But you see the books that I get each week. You see my CGC unboxings. Some of those I'm going to keep. Some of them I'm going to sell. And there's some that I will definitely be running on Instagram especially. So definitely join me on there and check them out. I will have specials just about every week. And all you have to do is DM me on Instagram and let me know if there's anything you ever want. You know, we'll work a deal. We'll figure it out. But I hope you guys will check out that. I'll leave links in the description so you won't miss that. And hopefully I'll see you guys there. Now, let's get into the books that I picked up from this comic book shop down in Roanoke, Virginia. So this new store that I went to down in Roanoke, Virginia is the third shop that I've visited in that area in the last couple months. And one of the reasons I ended up going there was on the Sunday when I was going back down to West Virginia, it was still open. And by the time I got down there, it was still open, but some of the other ones that I had visited in the past were already closed. So I decided, hey, let's go ahead, let's try a new shop, let's see what they've got. I don't know a lot about them. There wasn't a lot of social media presence, but I saw a few photos. They've got a lot of wall books, and that gives me encouragement to go to a shop like that just to see what they've got. And so I ended up going there, and it is a small little shop, a very small little building, standalone, and there was the shop owner in there, and that was it. There was nobody else there, and it was extremely small. And I ended up just having a big conversation with the owner the whole time I was there. Turns out he's more of a run pawn shops before, but he's a big comic book collector. And what I'll say about the shop was they had a lot of variety. There was a lot of books there, and there were definitely some wall books there. It was a lot of variety. I would say that the conditions overall were not in as minty as condition that I would like. There were definitely some good ones on the wall, but nothing that really jumped out at me that I had to take home. But he did have a variety. I mean, it went all the way from modern all the way down to some nice Golden Age stuff. He had a lot of Golden Age stuff, just not in the conditions that I was looking for. Definitely had some of those Donald Ducks and Uncle Scrooges and some of the funny books that I've been picking up recently, things like that, but it just wasn't in the conditions I liked. So what did I do in a shop like that? When I find myself in a position like that, I always try to find something to buy because I feel like I come into a shop like that, any shop, I want to support them. It's small businesses, I want to support them, and there's always a comic book or two you can pick up. You don't have to go nuts, but I start going through some of the bins. After going through some of the better boxes that he had. When I say better, I'm talking about the more expensive books. There's just nothing in there that was jumping out at me that I really had been spotlighting and wanting to take in my PC or even work on for resale. There was nothing there that just really jumped out at me. But I got into the back issue bins and I ended up finding a few things. And what I started finding to just buy, just so I could have a few things to buy, it turns out these are fantastic books. But they're not, and I'm picking them up right now, that's why I'm turning that way. They're not keys. They're just fantastic books. And these are books that every reader out there should have in their PC and be able to access these books. These books right here are just fantastic. They're some Batman books, and they're not going to be spec'd on, but they're just fantastic, and it's because it's by two different runs here. It's by the same creative team. you've got Batman number 394 right here. It's by, I'm not going to know how to pronounce this. It's Doug Munch. Is that how you say his name? Guys, let me know. I have no idea how to say his name. But it's definitely Paul Gulacy. And they were the artist team on this 2-issue run. This is the second issue where you had Batman facing off against a Dark Rider. He's a foreign agent. It's a great little storyline that, honestly, these are what the movies should be based on. Not these fantastic, over-the-top villains that just, I don't know. Joker's played out. The last movie was actually pretty decent. I didn't like at all what they did to the Riddler. That's not my Riddler. And I don't know. There was parts of that I really liked, but I think if they started taking source material from books like this and these right here, which is by the same creative team, Paul Gulacy, Doug Munch, I don't know. This is from Legends of the Dark Knight. I got 3 issues of the 5-issue miniseries from, this was early on. This is issues 11, 12, and 14. And this storyline, guys, if you've never read this is called Prey. It is, these books, the beginnings of the Legends of the Dark Knight book was the beginnings of Batman. It wasn't in exactly year 1, but it was definitely a take on the early adventures of Batman. And this is telling a story of when he faced off against Hugo Strange. And artwork's fantastic, of course, but this storyline is really good. It pits him against the mob. It pits him against the cops. The cops, there was one policeman especially that becomes a villain in this story, and you could really see the last Batman movie, you could see them taking inspiration from either of these 2 storylines right here. It just feels a lot more grounded than, as I said, some of these fantastical type of adventures that they start having. So, anyway, no spec on this whatsoever. I don't even think people have graded any of these books, but this series, The Prey, I've got every one of those signed by Gulacy when I met him years ago. In fact, I own an original piece of artwork from this series. I don't think it's from any of these 3 issues, but I've got an original piece of artwork from that series that I had him sign as well. So I have a lot of love for this series, and I just wish that the movies would take more inspiration from these stories than some of the others. But fantastic stories, guys. Go out there and read them. You won't go wrong. All right, so the next books I ended up picking up actually do have a little bit of value if you can get them graded at a 9.8. And some of these you'll recognize from previous videos. I've gotten some of these graded in the past and gotten lower grades than that 9.8. And today, with the market dropping, you really have got to get that 9.8 on these. But let me just go through them and I'll show you. Now, this is one I haven't gotten graded, but I have picked up in the past. I love this book. This is the New Teen Titans Drug Awareness issue put out by Keebler. And it still features the creative team of Marv Wolfman and George Perez. It came out in November of 1983. And there's not a lot of spec on this. A 9.8 on this just recently sold for only $75 on eBay. I guess it was back in June of last year. So it's not a super big book, of course, at all. But what I like about it is, of course, you've got George Perez artwork and everything, is that this came out after he had given up, Dick Grayson had given up the Robin mantle, but before issue number 44 of the Titans, where he became Nightwing. And if you look real close right here, you can see him in a different costume. And it's really interesting. I don't even know if he had a name in the book, to be honest. But it's an interesting time period where they did this issue, but they didn't have Robin, so he had to assume a different identity that I don't hear anybody talking about today at all. Everything's about Nightwing. He just celebrated the 100th issue in his own comic book. It's a big hullabaloo. But this right here would be interesting. I have to go back and actually read this book again and see if they actually had a name for him at the time. But regardless, it's not a super big book, but at a 9.8, there's a little bit of value to it. And I really got this more as just add-on, sort of like those Batman books. It's in really nice shape. And it's a book that I'll hold on for the PC for the time being. It's nothing that's going to get rushed in. It's not a spec book, guys. Not a spec book. Just a personal favorite. Now, these three are books that you probably have seen some of these in the past. I've got Marvel Comics Presents number 74, 81, and 82. You know, I think I should have a bigger table set up so you can see all three of these at the same time. So sorry about that. I can't show off all three of these in this current setup. But I wanted to show them all three of these at the same time because it's all part of this wonderful Weapon X storyline by Barry Windsor Smith. You have not a lot of value unless you get that 9.8. And even then, again, today's values have really dropped. The 74, which one's the 74? This one right here, really dropped down. It just sold recently on eBay as a 9.8 at $93. It's almost not worth getting graded at this point. It's more of a challenge, and it's one of those things. If I can ever get these at 9.8s, I've got a couple. I wouldn't mind doing a run on this. This would be a nice little project piece because the most common books you're going to find on this is graded is a 9.8. There's no value at a 9.6 or lower. Anything below a 9.8, it's falling off the cliff, as I often say. The middle one here, this is 80 or 81 right here. This one right here ends up being a little bit more expensive than the 9.8. Sold back in December for $110. And the last one right here, this is 82. 9.8 just sold on eBay again in December for $105. So as you said, there's not a lot of value in these. These are personal project books that I would love to get graded to have for the PC. It's a great run. The issue that you want, of course, is 72, the first issue in that miniseries. And that one has some value, and again, even that has dropped. But it's definitely one, I think, when they get around to doing Wolverine, and hopefully they'll do a little bit more of his origin. You got a little bit in some of those original X-Men movies, but I think if they played off of this a lot more, I think they could do a really good job, and especially if it's MCU. Even though the MCU movies have not been as good recently, I think that I still have a little faith that what the product will come out will be actually pretty decent. So I like these books. Again, these are, again, more of the PC type books. These aren't super big. You see the kind of books I'm picking up from the shop. I wasn't finding many bigger books at higher grades. I was finding some books, but the conditions just weren't what I wanted. And so I was a little disappointed in that. But I did manage to walk away with two books that have a little bit more speculation to them. Or, well, I guess speculation is not the right word. It's more as they're key books. And they've got, one of them has some really surprising value, and I'm kind of glad I picked it up. I did it mostly for the cover and a little bit for the character, not so much spec for his movie appearance that's coming up, but I did it because, well, a little bit, I suppose, but it's a minor key, and I'll show you here. It's Marvel 2-in-1 number 63, and you've got the resurrection of Adam Warlock in this. And I don't think it lasts, but they do bring him back, sort of. That's why they have a question mark right there. But you have this wonderful George Perez artwork on here. And it's a book I'd never had. I did have the issue that was right before this. You had Her, which was the companion to him. And again, another fantastic George Perez cover. He did a lot of these covers from the issues in the 50s with Project Pegasus into the 60s with Warlock and Her. And I'd never had this, but because of Warlock coming in the new Guardians movie, there's any of his appearances are going to be a little bit more spotlighted. And I didn't know the extent of it either. I knew this book right here. I didn't look it up. It wasn't on my list prior, but it's one that I knew about. 9.6 is the most common graded on this right here, and it's about $100. And I'm going, okay, that's kind of interesting. 9.8, God forbid I can get a 9.8 on this. And I'd say I've got an outside shot right now before I get into the book too much. I haven't opened it up examine everything, but the spines always look good. You know, I look at the spines when I go to shops like this. If there's any defects, I usually won't pick it up on books like this, but it looked really good. 9.8 on this recently sold on eBay for $455, and that's crazy. I hope that's not an outlier, because I would love to see that on something like this. That would be great. I mean, I'd keep it for my PC for a little bit, but it's a book I would definitely not mind selling and hopefully making a little bit of profit on, and again, helping pay for some of this hobby. But that was a surprise. But the only real key that I pulled off the wall, and I wish I had examined it just a little bit closer, because, I mean, I took my time, but I didn't take enough time, because there's a little defect on the spine. But I picked up this. I'd never had this before. It's Superman Adventures #5. It's the first appearance of live wire in comic books. And I knew it was a pretty decent key. I looked it up real quick on, what did I look it up on? On Go Collect. And it had if you can get a 9.8 on this, it had about a $200 value. And when I walked out of there, I thought this was going to be the big book of the day. I didn't realize that Marvel 2-in-1 was going to be the big book at a 9.8, guys, at a 9.8. It was, this one right here, I paid a little bit more money than I probably should have, but it was one of those, I don't know what it is. I get in there and I buy a few books that basically just to get a few books, and then I end up getting this book too. I probably should have put some of these back. But this is a pretty good book. Even in a 9.6, like I said, it's 9.8, it's a $200 book. And a 9.6 is an $88 value, but it's still a key first appearance. So I think that's one of those that you could probably push it up to $100, probably a $100 value book at a 9.6. So if I had paid a little bit more attention, I should have put this one back, pulled away, and just got what I got. But I'm always looking for that big book sometimes. And for me, this was the big book that day. He did have some bigger books there that I thought were decent, but it just was not at the prices I wanted and the conditions I wanted. So this is what I ended up with at this new shop. It was the Big Belly Comic Cave. I will probably go back there in the future, but after I get the chance to go back to Big Lick first, and what was the other shop? There's another shop there too. I can't remember the name right off. And I'll end up trying all three of these shops again on some of my travels through Roanoke. I end up in that region about at least once every month or so. So I will definitely be stopping back by there and see what other books I can pick up. But I know kind of their inventory now. So I'll definitely be looking for hidden keys and maybe some minor keys at this point. I'm not really sure. So if you guys are in the area, give Big Belly Comic Cave a shot, and hopefully you'll enjoy the shop too. Let me know if you go there. I'll definitely give them another shot. Okay, hold on. You thought that was the end of the video, right guys? I know you did. Get one comic book shop spotlight, but no, today you get a bonus. You get a bonus, you get two. I went back to Third Eye Comics down in Annapolis, Maryland. On that same trip when I went down to Roanoke, I came back by Third Eye in Annapolis, and I ended up picking up some pretty nice books off their wall. So I thought I would do a quick shout out to those guys. I love those guys. I try to go down there almost every Wednesday on New Comic Book Day. But this day I got back, and on that same trip, it wasn't the same day as I went to Roanoke, but it was on that same trip when I came back. I went down there on Wednesday late in the day, and I ended up with a couple key comic books, and I'm going to show those off right now. These are definitely medium kind of spec books. They're not super valuable. Again, you got to get 9/8 in these, and the first one has really dropped in value because I know for a fact that I got this graded out of my PC, and I sold it, and it was at a decent price, and I know that the price today is not even close to what I got for it back then, but I bought it to pick it back up in my PC. It's Batman number 612. Jim Lee goodness here, and it is the Superman issue where he's under the control of Poison Ivy, and just a wonderful cover. I love this cover. It's my favorite cover out of the whole Jim Lee Hush storyline. But the value on this is kind of hard to believe. I went ahead and picked it up, and it wasn't too expensive. And I wanted it back in my PC, and the condition's great. But a 9.8 just recently sold on eBay for only $63. You gotta be kidding me. I know that I didn't even sell it close to that. So this market is really down. You can definitely find some nice books out there graded. Definitely a buyer's market. It is not a seller's market, that's for sure. But glad to get this one back into the PC. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get this cleaned and pressed again, and I'm going to send it back in to get it graded so I can have it in my PC for a little bit longer this time. We'll see. The next one is one that I've actually got in my PC, but I keep picking up additional copies of this. This is Amazing Fantasy #1. This is from 2004. It is the first appearance of Arana. I hope I'm saying that right. And the value on this, again, has dropped as well. And this right here, 9.8, right now just recently sold here either last week in December, beginning of January, for only $105. I think it's $105. Now I have to double check that. If I'm wrong on that, I will definitely put the graphic up here that will say different. I'm looking at my notes that I've got right there, and it looks like it says $105. So that one has really dropped, and I probably would have not picked it up if I had looked at the value when I was in the store. But I know that I've pulled my own copies of this to clean and press, and so I just went ahead and picked up a third copy because, like I said, they had some nice keys on the wall when I came up here, came back to the store a couple weeks ago. And then the last key that I picked up off of their wall is X-Men 205. This is the first appearance, I believe it's Hope Summers. Let me see. They actually put, yes, they put on here these stickers that you see. It's called Third Eye Key Issue, first cameo of Hope Summers. You got this wonderful cover of Lady Deathstrike by David Finch here as well, and Mr. Sinister. And this is a book that I have gotten graded out of my PC. I got both of my personal copies. I got both of them graded and ended up, I know I sold at least one, and I know I got some pretty good money for that. The other one I think I still have in the PC, so I just went ahead and picked this up. It wasn't too expensive. So this one right now is going for about $231. That is really good for a 9.8. It's the most common grade out there. 9.6 will drop off. I don't even have the numbers in front of me, but I'll put it up on the screen so you can see what a 9.6 on that runs as well. But that's definitely the bigger of the three books here, although personally I like that Batman much better. And then the last book I picked up, well, the last book I'm going to show you that I picked up, because I picked up a bunch of new Comic Book Day books as well. And I did the same on this one too. This was not this from last week, it's from a couple weeks ago. It's the first issue of Scarlet Witch, and I had not pre-ordered this. And so they still had it on the stand, so I went over. It wasn't on their new comic books this week stand, it was on their regular wall of books from, and they had a thing, new last week type of thing. So I went ahead and picked up a copy of this. They had 2 or 3 of these sitting there, and I went up to the stand to pay for everything, and as the girl was moving the books to scan the barcode right here, I'm looking at the bottom, and let me show you. See if I can do. Can you see that where my fingers are pointing right there? It's a little hard to see. I don't think I'm going to focus in. Yeah, it's going to be too hard to focus in on there. It looked like it was a signature, and I'm going, oh, that's interesting that the artwork, the artist signed like that. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. That actually looks like, what's this, a Steve Orlando? Is that that's the writer on this, right? It looked like it could be his signature because he had just done a signing at Third Eye Comics a couple weeks ago on a Saturday. I didn't go to that signing, but this was the new book release. I imagine that because they usually bring in a creator with one of their new books that's coming out. And literally, this was on the stand. And I think what he did was he signed a bunch of books and they put them back up on the stand and let people pick them up without having to pay a premium or anything. Because they definitely have a stand in that store where you can buy any books that the extra books that they get from the artist, creator, they'll get extras and then they will put them on their stand and sell them at not at a huge premium, but definitely, like a book like this will probably sell for about $10. They'd put a $9.99 price tag on that, most likely. So I thought, well, wait a minute. I went ahead and bought it, and on my way out, I went over, and I probably should have picked up the other ones, but there's no real value on something like that. Definitely, yeah. He had signed a couple of these, and they put all three. They had three copies of this sitting there on the stand, and I could tell because the signatures were slightly different on each one. So I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, that's my very quick little spotlight from my favorite LCS here in the Baltimore area. Give those guys a shout out. I'll probably be down there. You're going to see this one's on Friday, so I will have already gone back down to the shop by that point. But it's pretty cool. I'll have to see if they've got any of those copies left, if anybody else noticed that. But guys, if you're ever here in the Baltimore area, give Third Eye Comics a shout out and a try. There's several different stores in the area, but their flagship is in Annapolis, Maryland. The amount of stuff that they got there is fantastic, so you can't go wrong. They could have a lot more older keys, but they definitely have a big giant wall of keys that changes almost every week by a lot. So it kind of makes you go down there and see what's on the wall. They don't have a lot of old back issue bins. You're not going to go there and go through Silver Age boxes, for example. Mostly modern type comic books, but you can definitely find some keys in there, and they will definitely have some older books that they bring in from collections. So give them a shout out, give them a try when you get there in Annapolis, and you won't go wrong that way. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. You got 2 comic book shops for the price of one. You thought you were going to get one, but you ended up getting 2. If you get a chance, visit each of these, one down in Roanoke, Virginia, the other in Annapolis, Maryland. Hope you get a chance to try them out. Let me know if you get to go to these shops, and let me know what you think of the books today. What do you think of these books? They're not really big keys at all. They're good books for the PC, and especially the ones from the Comic Cave down in Roanoke. These are definitely books that I'm going to take out, and I'm just going to enjoy reading them again. They're in really good shape, which is one of the reasons I bought them, because they're all in my PC. I had all those Batman books already, but these are in really good shape, so I kind of wanted to add them to the collection because of that. But leave me a comment in the comments section. Let me know. And on Monday, join me Monday, where I go over some much bigger books, bigger keys that I've recently picked up from Whatnot and from eBay. And we'll go over those, and we'll talk about the speculation on all of those. And anyway, hope you guys have a great weekend. I will see you Monday, and remember, every comic has a story.